Welcome friends to another Dune video. How do the Fremen on Dune thrive in such a hard environment? The heat and sunlight mixed with Coriolis storms and giant sandworms. With a Fremkit, essential to live on Arrakis outside your Sietch. Spoilers for the Dune Encyclopaedia throughout, let's get into it. The Fremkit is made up of items common to most Fremen. It weighs around 10 kilograms and is able to be compacted down into a small bundle. There is a theory that a Fremkit and a manual is presented to a Fremen youth as a way to transition them from childhood to adulthood as a rite of passage. Now let's look at and get some details for the items in the Fremkit. The first one we're going to look at is the Barodai Pistol. This can be used for measuring or signalling. It was mainly used to mark off a big area, which could be used in the capture of sandworms, and to signal a spice merchant by marking an area to distinguish it from the rest of the desert if the spice merchant is airborne. This shows the skills the Fremen have with technology to get items to work in the desert when so much more advanced technology does not, such as personal shields. The next item is the Filt Plug. They are used to stop the loss of body moisture. They are made of a spice-based compound. 2 parts go in the nostrils, and the outlet at the bottom fits into a stillsuit's catch pocket. The ends of each are made to give a snug fit, so no moisture is lost. They would feel rough when fitted at first, leaving sores, but eventually these become calluses and you don't feel that anymore. And so, all the air exhaled from the lungs with its moisture goes into the stillsuit's recovery system. If one filter becomes clogged, the user could still use the other nostril. For a plug to be cleared, you pull out the connections and blow backwards through the air passage, but this does not happen often, as with much importance attached to the devices the Fremen need in the desert, they would be checked for upkeep, the plugs cleared, and Filt plugs would be replaced before a Fremen would leave or return to a Sietch. Perhaps one of the more well-known ones we're going to look at, maker hooks. They are used for capturing, mounting and steering the giant sandworms or makers of Dune. The lengths of hooks vary according to the size of the worm and the skill of the Fremen using the hooks. At one end was a hook, barbed at the tip, and at the other it was made to fit the grip of the user. In use, the worm is summoned with a Thumper. Now this next part, the description of how the Fremen actually use the hook to get onto the sandworm, this is all taken directly from the Dune Encyclopaedia. The hookman, or first mounter, stood aside from the approaching worm. As the maker went by, the hookman inserted one hook beneath the leading edge of one of the sandworm's rings, and the other hook at a slightly lower edge on the next ring. The hookman braced himself back on the hooks, rolling upward with the worm as it rotated away from the threat of sand entering the gap opened by the 2 hooks. Once up, the hookman and followers steered the worm by opening the gaps down one side of the beast, prompting it to roll away from the gaps to prevent sand getting in. A Fremen youth would get his own hook as a sign of adulthood. Some believe that a Fremen must get these 1 part at a time. A hook that didn't fail would be considered lucky, and if the hook did fail, then it was believed this could mean bad luck for the tribe. The next item is a power compass. It lets the user select the magnetic pull that is to be the reference point, and then you can read directions relative to that source. The Fremen were originally wandering Zinsuni, and they came up with the first crude compass. The compass will be used so a Fremen can find their way against the obstacles of sandstorms and dune shifts. The next item is the rep kit or repair kit. This can be used, unsurprisingly, to repair a stillsuit. It contains spare filters, a few lengths of water tubes, patch material and poltivates. So if a tube is cut whilst climbing or creased during sleep, it can be fixed with a replacement tube, and temporary patches can be added if a stillsuit has holes in it. Maintaining a working stillsuit was a high priority when the Fremen ventured outside of their sietch. The next item, the sand snork, is used to get air into a tent when it's buried by a sandstorm. The snork pumps air into the tent. The next item is linked to that and is the still tent itself. The original version of the tent was made by the Zensuni, the Fremen before they came to Arrakis, that is what they were called. Those tents were crude, but did what was needed. The outer layer would turn white during daylight hours and go back to normal at night. The water that gathered on the surface trickled into thin ducts built into the bottom of the tent and then went into catch pockets in the corner. The process was repeated inside the tent through moisture from the breathing of those inside it. This design then evolved on Arrakis. The homes were semi-permanent before Arrakis. On the desert planet, they work as a temporary place of shelter when you are outside your sietch. So their size was reduced, so they were just large enough for people to sleep in and have their equipment stored there. This new style tent had a door of clear plastic so those inside could see out, but this could be blocked by a flap inside when wanted. Several layers worked to capture moisture from perspiration and exhaled moisture and kept the tent cool, and a layer made of catch pockets and tubes for water consumption and storage was also there, and the last layer allowed heat out, but only one way. The next item on the Fremkit list is the Thumper. As you may know, this attracts sandworms. The predecessor to this was called an impact hammer. It was used to study rock structures below the ground with sound waves. This attracted worms. This is where the idea came from, and this developed into the Thumper that the Fremen now use. The Thumper must be put into the windward face of a dune, and then the thumping is started. A tube and a stake resonate together to send out a low-frequency sound wave that reels in the sandworm. Its second use was to act as a decoy to draw a worm away from a Fremen. Now, friends, I turn this over to you. What do you think to the technology the Fremen deploy? Can you think of anything else that would help the Fremen survive in the desert? Have you wandered the desert and fallen prey to a Coriolis storm and survived? Comment down below.